Hey guys, welcome to Priceless B Movies. I'm your host, Colin Price. And every so often a movie comes out that is not only interesting, not only entertaining, but teaches a very important life lesson. This film taught me a very important life lesson, and it is this. If she wants some water, but she wants it in a bowl, she's probably a bitch. Weapons. Weapons is the new horror film from Zach Kreger, the guy who a couple of years ago gave us Barbarian. Now I know I'm in the minority on this, it's okay, I often am, but I'm one of the few people who really didn't like Barbarian. I thought the setup was good, I thought that the acting was terrific, and this might be some bias on me because it starts very much like one of my books does, where you get these two people in a house together, one of them is vaguely threatening, but you're not really sure what's going to happen, but then once it kind of had that tonal shift, that story structure shift, and then it started focusing on Justin Long kind of being the same kind of jerk that he was in Tusk, and then it just kind of fell apart for me. Then you get kind of that reveal that's straight out of like an X-Files episode. I really didn't like the shift. And that second half of that movie really ruined the whole thing for me. But then a few months ago, I saw one of the trailers for Weapons, and I thought, it was the guy's first movie, and this looks really interesting. And I've kind of been looking forward to it ever since then. Finally got to go with my fiancé and see it yesterday. So what did I think? Well, let's start off with the plot. Based in an admittedly intriguing concept, the story revolves around the aftermath of the mass disappearance of 17 kids who were all in the same class together. Basically, there's this teacher played by Julia Gardner, and every single one of her students, except for one, all vanish in the middle of the night at like 2:17 on the dot. Now, when I say vanish, I don't mean that they, disappear or that someone kidnaps them or that they're all dead no, I just mean they literally get up out of bed, run out of their houses and into the darkness at the exact same time, and they haven't been seen since. The rest of the film follows 6 individual characters whose lives are affected by this tragedy in various ways, and the film kind of unfolds in almost like Pulp Fiction style way, where it's kind of like you get 2 or 3 days in the life of this character, 2 or 3 days in the life of this character, and you see how all 6 intersect. It kind of reminded me of an old Simpsons episode called Trilogy of Error, whereas like over the course of this 20-minute episode, you saw a day unfold, but like part of it followed Bart, then part of it followed Homer, and you saw how they how their paths cross over the course of the day. This was a really interesting way to kind of flesh out the mystery, but oh my gosh, it really makes you wait for those reveals. Now, I really don't want to go too much further into the plot than I already have. This is definitely one of those movies where the less you know going into it, the more fun you're likely to have with it. I will say that when it gets to the reveal of what happened to the kids, it was not what I was expecting to be. At the same time, I really don't want to tell you what I was expecting, because then you're going to be like, oh, well, Colin said he thought it would be this, and then he said that it's not that, so now I can scratch that off the list. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you anything about what happens past like the first 15-20 minutes of this film. One thing that did strike me about the narrative structure, how it follows these 6 different people, and it didn't really strike me until after the film when I kind of realized that all of these characters are fundamentally flawed. The teacher, Julia Garner's character, is an alcoholic and is not the most ethical person. She does a lot of morally questionable things, but she's incredibly sad. She's dealing with this tragedy through sorrow. Then you have another character who's one of the parents of these missing kids, played by Josh Brolin, who is wonderful in this film, and he's very much like the anger stage. And then you get a character who's, in denial of the whole thing. So each character in their own way kind of represents one of the different levels of how you deal with grief. I thought that was really interesting, even though it took me a while to kind of catch on to it. I'm not quite sure if that was intentional, but I loved it. And when I talk about grief, I want to be very clear on something. I mean to post a video sometime in the near future that's like my top 10 horror movie tropes that I wish would just die away. And right near the top of the list, I'll let you know right now, it's horror films that use grief or trauma as a metaphor. I'm so sick of it. Look, The Babadook did it really well, a decade ago. And in those 10 years, it seems like every other intriguing, high-concept horror movie that comes out halfway through the movie, they're like, oh, but this thing is really a metaphor for the loss of this character's mother, or this character who went through this horrible thing in the military. So the monster's not really so much a real threat as his guys, just fucking stop. It's the same reason I didn't like the Smile movies. It's the same reason that I didn't really like, what was the one everyone, Talk to Me, where it's like all you have to do is like pretend to be the main character's dead mother, and then all of a sudden this character is just going to screw up every decision for the rest of the film. Makes it impossible for me to enjoy watching it because I'm so done to death with it as a concept. Now that I've got that rant out of the way, this movie is not that. This movie doesn't try to dress up trauma as some kind of supernatural creature or something. It's very much about how these characters are dealing with a tragedy and how they're dealing with it in their own ways, but the antagonist of the story and the ultimate reveal has very little to do with that, and that was a real breath of fresh air. I do want to give extreme kudos to the entire cast. Julia Garner was good, Josh Brolin, wonderful. He probably has the best line delivery of what the fuck that I've ever heard in a film. They got a laugh out of just about everyone who was sitting in my theater. But the supporting cast is great too. Alden Ehrenreich, Amy Madigan, Benedict Wong, all of these actors were phenomenal. I don't think there was a single person, like a single actor who was kind of like miscast or out of place. Everyone seemed to understand the assignment, even when I'm sure that the assignment, while they were shooting it, it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to play this part in this way, and I hope this works, because this is still very much coming together for me. I can certainly see that having been the case for at least some of these actors, because this movie's all over the place with its storytelling. Amy Madigan especially, I was really surprised to see. I grew up, Field of Dreams is one of my favorite movies of all time. But, between that and Uncle Buck, it was kind of like, I didn't even realize she was acting anymore. But hey, I'm hoping that after this film, her career gets a little, shot in the arm, because she was terrific. I was really shocked, too, at just how funny this film was. Not to say if there's anything funny about the concept. Obviously, there's nothing funny about children disappearing. But, I was kind of going into this thinking it was going to be a lot like Prisoners. Remember that one from, 2013? It was one of my favorite movies that year. I really thought this was going to be more like that. But, that's such a grim and dark and dreary film. This movie had a lot of laughs in it. And it was interesting because a lot of it was like, am I supposed to be laughing at this? This seems like if this is intentional comedy, it's really, really dark comedy. There was, like I said, the line delivery Josh Brolin has earlier on. And there's also, oh my gosh, this might even be saying too much. There's also a chase scene near the end of the film where I was practically having to hold my sides from how funny I thought that sequence was, whether it was supposed to be or not. The movie also reminded me a lot of Heretic from last year with Hugh Grant, which was my favorite film of 2024, and it reminded me of it in the sense that you never really know where this is going. Like I said, I thought I knew where this was going to go, and I was way off, and I really love that. I love when a movie can kind of keep me on my toes and make me constantly question where I think it's going to go, because I'm usually pretty good at picking up on things like that. I've watched enough movies, especially enough horror movies in my time, to be able to see the tropes and be able to see what's coming. This one got me pretty good, though, and I hope it does with everyone else who goes to see it. Guys, I had a great time with Weapons. I'm not going to sugarcoat this at all. I think this is one of the best films of the year so far. In fact, I'll come out and say that unless we get a bunch of bangers in the next few months, I could easily see this being in the top 3 of my top 10 at the end of the year. I really liked it that much. And that's my review of Weapons. Stay tuned, I got a lot more reviews coming. Thanks for watching Priceless B Movies.